Welcome back, everyone. Before we wrap up, let's dive a bit deeper into some specific examples and situations related to restaurants and cafes. This will help our English learners better understand when and how to use these terms.
Great idea, Sarah. Let's start with some typical phrases you might hear or use in a restaurant versus a cafe. For instance, in a restaurant, you might hear,
"May I take your order?" Or "Would you like to see the wine list?"
Exactly. These phrases indicate a more formal, full-service environment. In a cafe, you're more likely to hear,
"What can I get for you?" or "For here or to go?"
Right. These phrases reflect the more casual, quick-service nature of cafes. Now let's talk about some specific types of restaurants and cafes to give our listeners a better idea of the variety out there.
Good idea, Mike. When it comes to restaurants, you have fine dining establishments, which are very formal and often expensive. An example would be a Michelin-starred restaurant.
Then you have casual dining restaurants, which are less formal but still offer full table service. Think of chain restaurants like Applebee's or Chili's in the United States.
Don't forget about fast food restaurants like McDonald's or Burger King. These are very casual and focus on quick service.
Great examples, Sarah. Now for cafes, you have traditional cafes that focus mainly on coffee and light snacks, like a typical Parisian cafe.
Then there are coffee shop chains like Starbucks or Costa Coffee, which many people also refer to as cafes.
And we're seeing more and more specialty cafes pop up, like cat cafes, where you can enjoy a coffee while petting cats, or board game cafes, where you can play games with friends.
Those are fun examples, Mike. Now let's discuss some cultural differences our English learners might encounter. In some countries, the distinction between restaurants and cafes might be less clear.
That's true. For example, in many European countries, cafes often serve alcohol and light meals, blurring the line between cafe and restaurant.
And in some Asian countries, you might find food courts or hawker centers, which don't fit neatly into either category but offer a wide variety of food options in a casual setting.
Excellent point, Sarah. This is why context is so important when learning a language. The way these terms are used can vary depending on the country and culture.
Absolutely. Now let's give our listeners some practical advice. Mike, what would you suggest to someone trying to decide between a restaurant and a cafe?
Great question. I'd say think about what you're looking for. If you want a full meal with table service, go for a restaurant. If you're just looking for a quick bite or a coffee, a cafe might be better.
And don't forget about the atmosphere. Restaurants are often better for longer, sit-down meals or special occasions, while cafes are great for casual meetings or if you want to do some work while having a coffee.
Excellent advice. Now let's do a quick role play to help our listeners practice. Sarah, imagine we're meeting for a quick catch-up. How would you suggest a place?
Sure. I might say, "Hey Mike, do you want to grab a coffee at the new cafe downtown? I hear they have great pastries too."
And I might respond, "That sounds great for a quick meetup. But if you're free later, why don't we have dinner at that new Italian restaurant instead? I've been wanting to try their pasta dishes."
Perfect. Notice how we used "grab a coffee" for the cafe, indicating a quicker, more casual meeting. And for the restaurant, we used "have dinner," suggesting a longer, more formal meal.
Exactly. These subtle language differences can really help English learners navigate social situations more confidently.
Absolutely. We hope this extended discussion has given our listeners a more comprehensive understanding of the differences between restaurants and cafes, as well as some practical language tips.
Remember, the best way to learn is through practice. So we encourage all our listeners to go out there, visit different restaurants and cafes, and pay attention to the language used in each setting.
That's great advice, Mike. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's part of the learning process.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of today's extended episode of English with Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our deep dive into restaurants versus cafes.
Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English learning content. Until next time, keep practicing and happy learning.
Goodbye, everyone, and bon appétit, whether you're at a restaurant or a cafe.